The Phoenix Suns lost a big game on Sunday at home to the New Orleans Pelicans. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, was it a setback, a letdown, or just one of those losses? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Dime Magazine, the host of the Just Basketball Show, and I create written and video content covering the Suns for the Locked On Suns Insider community, which you can sign up for at the link in the show description below. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen Sunday night into Monday morning. Coming to you after a 113-105 loss by the Suns. We'll break it down in a moment. If you have not already, hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding the show. Become an everydayer. Get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all season long. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube. Hit that button. You get a new show in your feed every Monday through Friday, all season long. If you were already subscribed, you got a bonus episode on Saturday after the Wolves game, just like that. So hit that button. You know what to do. Support the show. Get good content. All of that good stuff. Only a week left in the season, so jump on. Joining us, as he does every single Monday, is Brandon Dueñas. He is a writer over at Bright Side of the Sun. Brandon, let's start with our moments of the game, as we often do. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, so I will let you go first. What is the stretch of this game that you feel like was most important, that decided how it went, that caught your attention? Where are you headed?
Yeah, for me, it was right off the jump, just how the Pelicans defended Booker. It was evident right from the start that they just wanted to take him out of the game, and I thought that was kind of, despite the strong start defensively for the Suns, holding them to 19 points in that first quarter, I thought the Pelicans really kind of changed the way the Suns played and set the tone in that sense, where Booker, obviously, outside of the three-point shot not falling, like he didn't have that bad of a night, but I thought they said, okay, Beal, KD, like you guys beat us. And I think they just kind of set the tone in that sense early, and it carried over throughout the rest of the game. And it was no surprise. Like we all knew this was going to happen after what he's done, his ownage of the Pelicans franchise, the last few games that he's played against them. So it wasn't a shock. I think Book knew was coming. Vogel did, but it definitely disrupted their flow a little bit that I thought offensively they had going into this game.
So not to bring up a sour topic, but it's on our way to a funnier topic, which is, and I think it still can be said that Book is dominant against the Pelicans. I mean, he was fine tonight. He's 50+%, 25-7, good enough. So I'm not going to back down off of that. Dallas fans like to call our team the Phoenix Suns, SONS, as in Luka owns, he is the father. It sucks. We kind of have to carry that. But what's the Pelicans version of that? What is there a 1-to-1 that we can use here to signify how deeply Book destroys this group of players, or do we just list the numbers and call it that?
Look, I think their name being called the Pelicans is punishment enough. We can just kind of let them live out in that sense, and they're just an annoying team. And I don't care if Pelicans fans listening to this get annoyed at me saying this. I think it doesn't take even some of the fans that I know and interact with realize that this is what they kind of bring out on themselves. And look, if the Suns can make the finals and have a 64-win season and whatever, and they get crap for how they went out, the Pelicans win 2 games against the Suns in a series, and it feels like those 2 wins were like 2 series wins for them. So you know what, we'll just let them continue to be the Pelicans and just worry about bigger things, because I'm not too concerned with them. I will shout out Zion though. He was great tonight.
Yeah, I think we will be getting to Zion here momentarily as we go. But yeah, I think the way that they guarded Book early, it was, like you said, predictable, right? I figured we would see it like you did. I wasn't concerned that would really kill the Suns in the end, because even on Wednesday, the Cavs basically guarded him coming off of the Pelicans game the same way as a result of that huge performance too. And he played out of it. This team is just too good, has too much shooting and spacing and playmaking to guard them the way that, to go back to again, that Dallas series that ended up being the Suns' downfall back then. So that did dictate the terms of the game, though, right? Because we had, I think, Beal had 6 points and 3 assists in the first quarter. We saw Durant take quite a few shots and in this game and end up 8 of 22. So the Pelicans effectively forcing the Suns to balance things out. The assist to field goal ratio was really good. 30 to 39, 30 assists, 39 made shots for the Suns. All that was kind of a ripple effect from there. Mine was the stretch from like the 11-minute mark of the fourth quarter through to the 8.5-minute mark of the fourth quarter, where Beal went on a personal 10-0 run. And I just loved that this game. I mean, Beal was asked, like, what does it mean that you did this, that you had this type of night? And he just said, well, it means I can, And it's like, yeah, it's nice to see that even when the whole story for a little while is Beal's trying to adjust and sacrifice and play make and, figure out a new mentality, a new approach within his role here, he can still drop 30 any night. And maybe he won't have another one of these the rest of the stretch run, because I do think he is changing all those things I just said. But I think it'll be good for him and good for this team to just have the reminder of, like, here's how we can get Brad activated.
Yep.
And he mentioned, too, I don't think this happened in the first quarter, Brandon, but it happened throughout the game. He was like, I did kind of take it personally that they were trying to put Zion on me and give him a break. He's like, I'm not going to let teams do that. So I think it was a confidence boost, and it started in that first quarter as well, like you just mentioned, as a result of how they guarded Book. But that fourth quarter, that shot by Alvarado early on, I was like, it might be over. And then Beal just said no, and he made it a game.
Yeah, and look, you can call me crazy, but this is the best I've felt after a loss in a long time. I feel like there is obviously it was a huge game and they needed to win, standings, yada, yada, yada. But I look at what Beal did, the way he looked, and for this team to hit their potential, they need him to look like this version. So that was very encouraging. And I think in a game where Alvarado and McCollum hit 12 threes on ridiculous efficiency, and like I was telling you offline, just Zion returning back to his Duke form, just going nuclear and had some ridiculous blocks. Took that type of performance from him, plus some outlier shooting performances, plus the Suns, Durant, Booker, and Allen combining for 25% shooting from three. That's just a recipe for losing a game that I think in most instances, if they played the same way they did, they'd probably win. And that second quarter really kind of dictated the rest of the game, where the Pelicans just had such a huge momentum shift, and the Suns couldn't really fight back from that just because their shots, they're getting some good looks. Like Grayson admitted it, like there's some good shots he was getting and they just weren't falling. And sometimes that's just how it goes. But I still don't feel like this loss is the end of the world by any means. I think obviously it's a game you want with trying to avoid the play-in and everything, but this is probably since October the best I felt about a loss in terms of just we're healthy. The big three looked fine. Durant was off a little bit, but I mean, it's, just got to live with it.
Yeah, in that fourth quarter, Zion really, he played well all night, but 12 points, only 1 assist. But honestly, even though he's a good playmaker, I think a high assist night for him is probably a better case scenario. And 3 of his 5 blocks came in the fourth quarter. So Beal made it a game. Zion took it home. It is really what happened. And so, yeah, you can probably pick some nits. We'll get into some of those, but without the adjustment in the first quarter that you mentioned and Beal taking over as a scorer really throughout, They're probably not even close enough. And a good fourth quarter overall. They were down double digits after that second quarter. So it probably wouldn't have been a game. And the fact that it was, yeah, maybe that's kind of the solace you take. So we'll talk into some of the negatives or the questions or pick some nits here. I'll make the devil's advocate case. Brandon is not worried. I'll maybe make the devil's advocate case for why Suns fans could be worried coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. March is over, but the biggest moments in college basketball go on throughout the month of April. The pro basketball regular season picks up not long after. Be part of all that action on Prize Picks for both men's and women's basketball coming up throughout the week. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as few as 4 correct picks, turning $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, the #1 fantasy sports app in the country. What I love about Prize Picks is that it is not a head-to-head, not a league, not a pool. It is you versus the Prize Picks player projections, so all you have to rely on is your knowledge. If you think somebody can do better than the projection says they will in points, in rebounds, and assists, well, just pick that and watch the money pile up. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, Brandon, let's keep it rolling here. So you gave some of the reasons why you're not worried, why you're not bummed. Let's just address the obvious reason this mattered rather than just, a game against a good team. This is the team directly next to the Suns in the standings, right? So this loss dropped the Suns to an equivalent record with New Orleans, but they do have the tiebreaker because they already beat them twice. So technically the Suns are still at 6, but it's tenuous. They have 2 games against the Clippers, a team that blew the crap out of them multiple times already this season. And then, Sacramento and Minnesota, which we'll see what happens. So this was a game you really would have wanted to have. And I think that's part of why Suns fans are bummed about it, even if the result wasn't as ugly as it could have been. But here's maybe the one thing I would say felt like I can't even really say it's as bad as any of it's clearly not as bad as the Spurs or the Bucks or the Thunder or whatever. But still, I will just say it did feel a little bit like, are we watching a team that is kind of back to square one with, do they have an answer for a dominant killer one-on-one type of scorer like Zion, right? We've seen this before with Giannis and Luka and whatever. Are they closer? Is that still going to be the death of this team? I could see some worry about that, but that feels probably like a bridge too far because it's just one game. But that's the one thing I could see. I don't agree with a lot of we'll talk about it, but play small or play Royce O'Neal playing more would have been the solution. Sometimes you just lose. I think the team played pretty well. Maybe Durant makes a few more shots, things look different. But other than that, I think you just sometimes lose by 8. It happens.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think in general, there's a lot of teams that just, whenever there's a Zion or a Giannis performance like that, or someone equivalent that could just get wherever they want, it's tough to find people, especially with the way the game's officiated these days, to stop those guys, and that's why they're as great as they are. So I think sometimes you just gotta live with it. And I think in a playoff setting, I think there would have been a little more desperation, hopefully, because to me, I think the one nit I'll pick with them tonight was just I felt like, or today, was that I thought the Pelicans played like they didn't have a tiebreaker, and the Suns played like they did have a tiebreaker. To put it as clear as I could, I guess, is just saying the Suns kind of felt like they had that house money to play with, and the Pelicans knew they had to win. So that was a difference. There was spurts of that sense of urgency that they needed, but it wasn't as consistent as the Pelicans, who I thought really responded well to what looked like, with how great the Suns defense has been of late, it looked like it was just going to carry over. And after that first quarter, like, this is just what the Suns defense is now. These guys are stalwarts, and we're playing back in the early 2000s here with these low scoring games. But then it the Pelicans just going to miss, and the momentum started back up in that second quarter.
Yeah, Beal basically said that, and it got a little overblown, and then it's like that weird thing that can happen in a press conference where it gets asked about 100 different other ways once a player says it, and it's like he already said it. But, he said that they played like they were aware of the disparity in, he didn't say what, but obviously the standings and the tiebreaker part that you mentioned, but also they don't have their best player, right? And they just lost 4 straight. The Suns were coming off 3 wins. They should have been more hungry. I know we always like to kind of pretend like that stuff shouldn't matter, and as fans we want to turn it on and be like, why is every player not giving 100% effort? But they're human beings, so stuff's going to fluctuate. They lost, again, not by 25. That would have been well within everybody's right to get very angry, but yeah, you have what Willie Green called one of the best games he's ever seen Zion play. Not just all of us who don't watch the Pelicans that much. His own coach said that was one of his best games ever. It's like, yeah, you're going to lose that game sometimes. But yeah, I think the other thing, so with this matchup specifically, I think if Zion can play like that, he is a matchup problem for everybody. So the Suns will have to account for that. I want to see this version of him more consistently on both ends before I say this is just who he is. He did it one time. Let's see it. But that's a problem. The Pelicans are also deeper. Like, it's not a coincidence that the run happened in the second quarter, right? Their bench, they can spread it out with Nance. Alvarado came in and hit some threes. Daniels did just enough. He's a minus in the box score. I personally don't think he's probably going to play in their playoff rotation, but he made it work. And then the last thing is, the main thing that has fluctuated with the Pelicans all season long that determines how good how scary they are is whether they make their threes. And McCollum was shooting like 50. He was their Grayson Allen in the beginning of the season, and he kind of has cooled off. But when he does this, 7 of 12, and he comes out aggressive, they're a really hard team to beat, even without Ingram. So I don't think you can count on them to be that good from deep every single night, but tonight they were, and that makes them really scary because you send help on Zion, and the guys are going to be open. If they knock it down, you're kind of screwed. So they have some strengths. They have some reasons that I could see it being a competitive series if they were to play the Suns or a play-in game or whatever, but I don't think this is something that really, truly scares me.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think they're a quality team. They're in a conference where there's a lot of those, and I think in a playoff setting, they have some flaws that could be exposed, and I think if the Suns did match up with them, I like their chances. Same with just about any other team in the West, honestly. But they're not a bad team by any stretch. Like I think the Suns and the Pelicans both are 46 and 32. If they're in the East, they'd be tied for the 3rd seed with that same record. So it just goes to show you how deep the West is. Like, there's a lot of talented teams, and that's why those losses, like this loss in particular, like I said, I'm not stressing over it, but then you go back and you kick yourself over that Spurs loss, those Spurs losses, and just those games in general earlier this year where it's like, that was such a gimme, that was a layup, and you just let it slip. This is the time of year where it comes back to bite you, and that's just the reality of it. And the West is tough, and I'll give the Pelicans some credit, like that they do fight and they do get up for these games against the Suns, but to me, I still don't think they're a real threat. With Ingram, it's a different story. I think they could definitely make things a lot more interesting, but just don't see him as a real threat at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fair. This season, with how good the West is the type of year where that loss to Brooklyn the night that Beal came back, or the loss to Memphis, I'm feeling like I'm opening healed wounds for people. Yeah, remember when they lost to Memphis at home, or the 2 Spurs losses and on and on. Those are the difference. It's not an exaggeration to say that losing those games will be the difference in where the Suns are seated. I mean, every team has those. It's not just the Suns, but that this game tonight is not why. Those games are why, I guess, to reiterate what you just said. And it's kind of just where it is now. But let's talk about the Pelicans going small. let's talk about the Suns rotation. And I'll probably let Brandon rant about Jose Alvarado a little more before we wrap it up. First, today's show brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I have told you time and again, I would not have my job if not for LinkedIn. Truly. Not just because I found it there, but because of all the info and the connectivity that I had with the company I wanted to work for. I was able to identify, yeah, I'm qualified for this job. I feel like I'm a good candidate. Let me apply. I knew what the pay range was going to be. I knew what the hours were going to be like. I knew who the hiring managers were, and I was able to get in touch with them. They were able to say, hey, yeah, that guy does seem to have what we're looking for. Set up an interview, message back and forth to set up that interview on LinkedIn. All the rest trickle down, and here I am. LinkedIn, not just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, making it the best place to hire. Access to professionals you won't find anywhere else while making the process easy and intuitive. They know small businesses are wearing a ton of hats, and that's why 86% of them get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they use LinkedIn. It takes the pressure, the responsibility, the stress off of you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, let's wrap it up. Bench mob vibe check here in a couple directions. So we'll talk about the rotation. I asked Kevin Durant post-game if he expected the Pelicans, if part of what the Suns talked about pregame was the idea that they might downsize and basically take Valanciunas off the court. I'm not sure anyone would have expected him to play 4 minutes, but KD said yes. He figured that they would try to, some of the defensive stuff you mentioned at the beginning, Brandon, but also just they got to do something because this game was equally important to them and they just got crushed on Monday. But the Suns didn't really adjust. And Frank Vogel did say that he wanted to have rim protection as a backline against Zion, and that's why he stayed big. What did you think of sticking to their guns rather than going to KD at center? Or, obviously we're always going to hear the Thad Young questions and everything else. What did you think of that strategy from Vogel and the coaching staff?
Yeah, I'm getting a little annoyed by it because my question is, what rim protection are we talking about here? Like the occasional highlight block, sure. But to me, it's like that's not their most effective counter in these lineups. Like sometimes if Eubanks is not in his rhythm or being productive, you could usually tell pretty quick with him, I feel like. And if that's not working, I think you have to lean into your strengths in other ways, whether it's Durant at the 5, getting Bull more extended minutes, getting some more Royce action. I thought there was different things they could have tried to experiment with, and they were too comfortable overall, I feel like, in terms of what their plan was to counter that Valanciunas 4-minute, just, I guess, sort of unexpected in terms of them going completely away from him shift.
Okay, I mean, I think we can all agree Eubanks, that's always up for debate. But would you have closed with Nurkic or would you have closed small? Because he played the majority of the minutes, obviously, over Eubanks.
I would have tried small. I would have tried Durant at the 5 with Royce in there. I would have even tried throwing some bull action in there. I just thought there was some, especially with how there is no stopping Zion when he's in that mode already. So I thought there was offensively, I thought there was some room for experimenting against a team that you could see in the playoffs. And they kind of not only failed with the lineup they threw out there, they failed to know if that's something that could work down the line. And to me, that's kind of like a double loss in that sense. And I get it. Like it's easy to sit here and say that. But I really just thought that there was some room for creativity in a crucial game that maybe he was kind of reluctant to do because of how important the game was. But at the same time, it's certain things were not working. And I just thought they could have tried to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And the point that I agree with the most is that I actually don't see a lot of fans making, that you just said, is the biggest area that they should be worried about how to adjust for Zion at center, especially, but I would say even Nance, is on offense.
Exactly.
Make it untenable for them. Don't say, how do we guard Zion at the 5? You're probably not going to. I mean, Stan Van Gundy played him at center a bunch, and he looked like he made the All-Star team. I think he was like, got some All-NBA votes, and he was in year 2 of his NBA career.
Yeah.
So that isn't stoppable. That's not the point. The point is, how do you, and that's what, I mentioned that with Beal. He did kind of try to take it personally, and I don't think he was talking out of his, they did that, right? Like, he did score on Zion a couple times. So they tried some things, but I asked Beal, like, when you're in a situation like that, how does this team try to attack those weak points in the defense when they do feel like somebody's trying to hide a player or whatever? Do you want to ISO it and spread things out and just go one-on-one, or do you want to run them through a set? And he said, good question, and then said both. So really, classy answer. I'm not being sarcastic. He didn't want to tell me. That's fine. But I'm curious about that. I think we could have seen more. I think you're absolutely right. But I will just say on the other end of it that one of the things that teams run into, like the Clippers had this problem when they lost to the Pelicans a couple weeks ago. It's one thing to say you want to leave your center on the court to defend as help, but Zion and that team are too good at ending up where your center is one-on-one against Zion, and then it's useless. So then there's really, you didn't do anything. Now you're screwed because he's going to beat that guy, and there's no help because that guy just ended up with his ankles broken on the outside. So the Suns had that happen a couple times with Nurkic. I'm sure they would take those back. Why do you think Royce O'Neal didn't play much today?
That's a great question. I thought, to me, like, the Pelicans are a great matchup for him. I'm not saying he's going to stay in front of Zion or like stop him by any means, but he's a body that I think could annoy him, that could burn some fouls and really just give him a different look and just stay in front. Obviously, vertically, he's not going to challenge him. There's no one that really can when he gets in that full stride. But I really thought this was a game that I was a little shocked he didn't get as much run, to be honest. I thought, and saying, just going back to what you said earlier and just kind of building off my point, is like, it feels like this is always a problem with the Suns, is they're too worried about what their opponent's doing in terms of trying to, how are we going to adjust to what they're doing, instead of saying, let's make them adjust to us. Let's lean into our strengths. Let's make them make the adjustments. And I feel like sometimes there could be that. Obviously, you can't go crazy and just not pay attention to what the other team's doing. Like, you still have to pay attention to that. But I think there's also times where you can counter that with a punch of your own and make them scramble and maybe have to call a timeout and adjust what they're doing. And then you build off that. Like, it's not like something you instill throughout the entire game, but there's those little games within the game that I feel like sometimes they're a step behind. And that was kind of one of my gripes with Monty in that Clippers series. And past couple of years, I thought Ty Lue, given what they had, did such a great job of doing that to the Suns. I just want them to be the team that's making other teams adjust more often. That's my biggest issue with the Suns I've had the past like 3+ years. Yeah,
I mean, there's a whole variety of things you could put in that category, right? The small ball with Durant at center being one. I get all these decisions, but I'm just throwing things out there, right? Josh Okogie, does he have a role to play 6 minutes in a random second quarter when no one's expecting him and just forces 3 turnovers? Like, I think of DeMarcus Cousins in 2021. Remember that game he dominated in the conference finals because Lue did exactly what you're talking about? Yeah, I think there is something there. Thad Young as a short roll guy, or, whatever. I think, to come back to this game, though, when Zion was on Beal, what I would like to see more of that maybe they didn't even really do is put Zion through screens. Have Beal run off ball and, have Zion try to be navigating all of that off the ball in space, and he won't, And then maybe Beal gets the ball off of that, has an open 3 or can drive or whatever. They're getting there. It probably won't be this high-powered machine by the playoffs, but they've done a little more of it. And, that Chris Paul's gone. So I guess that stuff we kind of have to say goodbye to. All right, box score oddity. Let's close there. KD kind of made this point post-game, and I don't feel like I can fully disagree, Brandon. He didn't call Grayson out, but I'll say that Grayson missed a lot of his open threes, especially in the fourth quarter. Book missed all of his threes, so you could even include him if you want to. But Allen had 2 in the fourth quarter that were pretty open. He hit the front of the rim once and the side of the rim once. If he makes those shots, this could just be a whole different game.
100%. Between that and some of the open looks they missed in general, I thought that was a difference right there. And that's sometimes in the NBA, that's what it comes down to. And tonight was just one of those nights. And that's why I'm not too high or low on this loss. But obviously the timing is everything. And they have 4 games left. They got to hit those shots and just hope they could finish strong and avoid that play-in. But overall, I'm still feeling pretty confident just at the overall body of work. I do think there's still some stuff they could tweak here and there and hopefully correct quick. But overall, I'm still optimistic. Call me crazy. I don't care. I still think this team's good enough to come out of the West. You could make the same case about a lot of teams right now, I feel like, if they really play to their full potential and stay healthy. So it's just sit back and hope they finish strong.
We are talking as the Wolves are up 14 halfway through the fourth quarter against the Lakers. So if they were to hold on, they would be tied for first, meaning that I guess either way, Oklahoma City is in third, but they would be fully in third unto themselves if Minnesota is able to hang on and win that game. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Just an update. I don't really want to talk about that matchup until we have to, but figured I'd throw it out there. That'll wrap us up for the week, or the day, the calendar week, but our week is just getting started. Hit follow or subscribe. Back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday against the Clippers. We will have Steven Perjone on Friday, and then it'll be playoff time. So you're probably going to want to keep it right here every single day, become an everydayer. Enjoy the stretch run. I will talk to you tomorrow.